This is a Bugaboo Runner, and today we're going to demonstrate how to swap out the inner tube or the tire and discuss swapping out inner tubes and tires on this model, both in relation to the front wheel and the back wheel. So to swap the inner tube or tire on the front wheel, you're of course going to need to remove it from the stroller. You do that by twisting this little lever and this cap and then flipping the lever backwards, as I just did. So now that you have it removed, we can remove the inner tube. Remove the cap first, and you're going to want to release the air from it. So in this case, I'm using a pair of spoons, which I do in some videos, but you actually can, they have like specific tire removal tools if you wish so. All you need is something flat that's not too sharp on the edge because you don't want to puncture the inner tubes and so on. So you're going to use the flat tool elements to lift up the tire over the rim. And when you've done it a bit, you can just pull it with your fingers around the rest of the edge like this. And now we can pull out the inner tube. Pop it out right at the nozzle and then just pull it out. So this is a 14-inch tire and inner tube. It's actually a bit of a weird size and can be a little bit difficult to get a hold of. In general, when you're dealing with anything over 12-inch, so you have 14 on this front wheel and 16 on the back, you're almost getting into the area of like children's bikes, and you can usually find tires and inner tubes in sporting stores. But if you can't find a 14-inch tire, in a lot of cases you can actually use a 16-inch tire and you just fold it over a bit. And sometimes they'll even sell it as a 14/16-inch tire in sporting goods stores. So usually that works fine. If you don't have the original tire, if you have something thinner, or if the tire is very worn down, then you might get a lump at that point, in which case that won't necessarily work. But in most cases it'll work to fold over a 16-inch tire. Now, in order to remove the tire itself, you just pull the rest of the tire out over the rim and take it off. And before putting on your new tire or inner tube, you want to inspect the rim, because this is a wheel like a bicycle wheel that has spokes, and these spokes can sometimes be loose. And if they're very loose, you'll notice that you can wiggle the rim back and forth and it'll move in relation to the spokes. That isn't the case here. But when those spokes get loose, what happens is that the end of the spoke pops up and can actually just puncture the new inner tube. So you want to just do a basic check that the spokes are in order, and then you want to make sure that this rubber flap is still covering all of these heads of the spokes. See, the spokes screw in like this. So if there are any loose, you can just screw them in. You know? If there's a lot of loose ones, then the screwing in can be a bit of a process, as if some spokes are longer than others, then the wheel won't rotate correctly and so on. But the basic idea when you're changing the inner tube is to make sure that if there are any single spokes that are unscrewed, and you can visibly see it even without removing this, you want to screw them in. You want to make sure that the rubber flap is covering this. If it's not, if you've lost the rubber flap, you can use electrical tape, wind it around a few times, make sure all of those heads are covered because they are sharp. Okay, if you're going to put then the new tire on, we'll just pretend this is a new tire. You want to slip the edge of the rim inside the tire on one side, pull it around. This, then you can take your inner tube. You again want to make sure it's, almost entirely deflated, if not entirely deflated. And you want to line it up such that the nozzle is with the hole. And then you can slip it in under the tire. And as soon as possible, pop that nozzle up through, because it's a lot harder to rotate once it's inside. Pull the inner tube in as you go around and be sure not to twist it. And then you want to kind of check from the side that the inner tube is as much as possible beyond that raised edge of the rim. And as you now begin to push the tire back into place, you want to be sure that the inner tube is not coming between the tire and the rim. As the process of pulling the tire back in place will pull the inner tube over the edge of that metal rim and break it. Give it a little twist to make sure that nozzle is straight, and we can start inflating. When you're inflating, the most important part is to check that the tire is evenly centered around the rim. So there's like this little border here. You can see where the pattern is a bit different, and the reason for that is so that you can see if the tire has moved out too much on one side. Just going to attach our pump. After I give it a few pumps, but before it's too full to move, I'm going to again check that rim. If you need to make any adjustments, you can push in and pull to get that as even as you possibly can. And then finish filling it up. Until it feels relatively tight. Then we're going to remove the pump, of course, and we can just put the wheel back in place. Assuming you haven't entirely unscrewed the elements of this axle, then it should look something like this, yes? And you can just slot it in. Hold it in tight against the fork, that's important. And then twist it back into place, and before it's entirely tight, you want to leave yourself a little room to push back that lever so that there's a little bit of resistance, but not too much. Okay, on the back wheels, the only major difference, again, is that they are 16 inch as opposed to 14 inch, so you can remove the back wheels. And then it's just a matter of repeating the process that I did on the front wheel to remove the tire and the inner tube and switch them out. So we hope this video has been helpful. If it has been, we ask you subscribe, as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. Thank you.